So this happened when I was in elementary school, and it was around 4th or 5th grade. I was really excited for the day because, of course, it was hat day, which is when you bring $1 and give it to the teacher and you can wear your hat for the day. So the day went pretty normal. Went to breakfast, had specials, went to class, etc. All that fun stuff. Now the best time of the day came around. Lunch. So I was really excited because we go to recess after lunch, but I was also super hungry. So anyways, I get in line, get my food, pay, and sit down with some of my friends. Probably about 20 minutes or so goes by, and I was done with my food and kind of just sitting there chatting with my friends. Well, another 10 minutes go by, and I'm starting to get a little worried because we're staying a little longer there than usual. So I decide to get up to ask a teacher what's going on. The teacher just said she's sorry and she doesn't really know herself. Another 3 minutes go by and the principal comes down and tells all the teachers to shut the cafeteria doors. Everyone's kind of freaking out a bit, but not a lot. They're just kind of confused on what's happening. The principal then comes in the cafeteria and then says,
"Listen everyone, pay attention. We're going on a soft lockdown, so please everyone stay in your seats and do not get up. Nobody is to be let out into the halls."
And then she left. Around 20 more minutes go by and everyone is still a little freaked out. Some people are even starting to cry. So I'm basically talking with friends and chatting with people around me, trying to keep my mind off of what's happening, when the teachers then start to close the blinds on all the windows. The intercom starts up again and then says,
"Look everyone, we're going on a hard lockdown. Stay where you are."
Everyone is totally freaking out now. An hour goes by and now half of the people are crying. I'm being a little dramatic bitch and I basically start writing on a paper about if I don't make it out alive, I love you type things. And so I'm literally having like a mental breakdown while half of the place is crying. I decide to get up and ask the teacher what's going on, and what she then told me absolutely sent chills down my spine. There's people who are saying they're gonna start a school shooting. They're protesting outside the school and police are outside as well. I literally just froze. I run back over to my seat and then tell all the people around me what's happening and just start hugging everyone, thinking this might be the last time that I'm ever going to see them or my parents again. After what feels like 100 hours, probably just one more hour in reality, and the intercom comes back on. They're saying that we're now on a soft lockdown again. I'm still crying my eyes out and hugging my friends. Another 40 minutes pass and the lockdown is now finally over. We survived. Everyone is still kinda crying, but they're a bit more happy and stuff. So it takes us about 20 minutes to get out of the cafeteria. We eventually get out, and everyone's moms and dads are there to pick them up. I'm going into the classroom, just trying to think what the hell happened. After about 30 or 40 minutes of waiting while crying, my mom finally shows up. I hugged her the tightest that I've ever hugged anyone in my life, and then went home. I was telling my mom what happened all the way home. I even later heard that they were apparently going to come back on Wednesday and then shoot up the school then. Well, as you can imagine, I didn't go to school that Wednesday. Yet nothing ever happened. I was still absolutely traumatized from this event. If you're the person that almost did this to us, I truly hope that we never meet. I really hope you burn in hell for traumatizing a 10-year-old girl who just wanted to wear a hat that day. You sick, awful f***. In 2017, in my last semester of high school, some friends and I decided to skip the pep rally for the girls' varsity basketball team making the playoffs for the first time. My last period of the day was theater tech. I was really just taking it as a fine arts credit, and 2 of my friends in the grade below me were in that class with me. We decided to skip the pep rally, leave school early, and go to the nearby Taco Bell like we did every day. However, administrators and security guards patrolled the parking lots to catch kids trying to skip, so we took a detour instead through the nature trail on campus in order to avoid them. Once in the nature trail, we'd came across this kid that I hadn't seen before. He was a skinny white kid with shaggy black hair, wearing baggy jeans and a plain white t-shirt. He was shorter than me, but the most notable thing about him was his general look of dishevelment. His hair was really wild and full of leaves and twigs. His plain white t-shirt was dirty, and the knees of his jeans were stained green and brown. He actually seemed like he had been crawling around in the nature trail. I remember wondering for a split second if maybe he lived there. When we came upon him, we were walking in one direction parallel to the school and to the back of the parking lot, and he was coming directly toward us. I knew the nature trail well enough to know that there was a bend that led deep into the woods, and I figured he had come from there. He was out of breath, and he looked scared. My 2 friends said hi to him. My friends were in the grade below me, and later told me that the kid was in their grade and was just acquaintances with my 2 friends. It was really just supposed to be a quick hello, but I couldn't help but notice how scared he looked and how suspicious he seemed of us. He asked us what we were doing in the woods, and we told him we were skipping the pep rally. One of my friends then asked, "What have you been doing out here? Camping?" Me and my other friend kinda gave a nervous laugh, but the kid didn't even crack a smile. He explained that he was dropped off at school that morning, and he was supposed to get on a bus to take him to DAEP. Now, DAEP was the alternative school that kids who got suspended from school had to go to. Now his plain outfit started to make sense now. It was the infamous uniform of that alternative school. He then explained that he didn't want to go to the alternative school, so when his mom dropped him off, he pretended like he would wait for the bus and then hid in the nature trail for the full 8 hours of the school day. He was still acting really skittish, and without even looking at each other or speaking to each other, my friends and I could just feel that something definitely wasn't right and that we were in some kind of danger. The kid looked around nervously often, as if someone might have followed us or if we were alone in the woods. We hit him with a, "Alright man, well good luck. We're gonna try to get to our cars and go home before the pep rally ends." When he heard the word cars, he perked up. He started slowly walking with us towards the parking lot, continuing to talk. He becomes a lot more friendly now and asks if we can give him a ride home. We give him some half-baked excuse why we couldn't, but he doesn't really take no for an answer. He tells us that people are going to start looking for him pretty soon and that he was going to be in a lot of trouble if he doesn't get out of there. We tell him that he'd probably be fine hiding there deep in the nature trail, but he then just tells us, "Nah man, you don't understand. I broke into a car at the fellowship." He pointed in the direction of the mega church that had a parking lot backed up to my school, then saying, "I took this." From his waistband, he then pulled out a handgun, and I felt sick to my stomach. I had never seen a real gun like that in real life. At this point, I really felt like I was in danger. Not just because he had produced a gun. I had never really been scared of them. More so that the entire interaction just felt really uneasy, and that the guy was already unsettling and desperate to begin with. One of my friends then very cautiously tells him that he should probably just ditch it and take off somewhere. And he just stood there staring at us for a really uncomfortable amount of time, his eyes meeting each of ours. I broke the silence by saying that we wouldn't tell anyone, but that we really had to go before the pep rally ended. And then my other stupid-ass friend, who had been virtually silent the entire time, then spoke up and said, "Yeah, and it's really best we're not around if they start looking for you for that," pointing to the handgun. His eyes narrowed once more, and he asked if one of us could take him home. This time, however, it felt more like a command. I've never really been a super brave person, but in that moment, I don't know why, I just blurted out, "Nah man, I'm good." And again, there was a really uncomfortable silence. Then he asked, "Before you leave, do you guys want to see something?" My first friend was kind of a hothead, and although he was really uncomfortable with the situation, he wasn't afraid of conflict, nor was I. My other friend, however, wasn't a fan of conflict, and would almost always de-escalate first. We all looked at each other, and me and my first friend kind of had an unspoken understanding, like if this was really going to happen, or if we were going to have to run or fight. My other friend was very visibly afraid. He asked, "What is it that you want to show us?" And before the kid could answer, my first friend then said, "We don't want to see it. We have to go." My first friend started briskly walking past the kid, and me and my other friend quickly followed. Within a few steps, we just started sprinting towards the parking lot. I decided to look back once we were about 50 steps away. As I looked back, he was still just standing there, watching us run. He put the gun back in his waistband before taking a small adjacent trail back deeper into the woods. By the time we made it to the parking lot, there were police everywhere. We were sweating out of breath and absolutely terrified from everything that happened. They ended up finding the kid within the next 10 minutes. Somehow in the chaos, nobody saw us exit the nature trail and into the parking lot. But since there were so many cops in the parking lot, we decided to just head back inside through another side door, only to find out that the door was locked. That's when an administrator had found us, brought us inside, and then shoved us into a classroom where we were able to talk with the others and find out what was going on. This is what we could piece together from what we learned. Turns out that the kid had skipped DAEP, hid in the nature trail, broke into a car at the church, and then stole a semi-automatic shotgun and handgun from the car. After stealing the guns, he texted his girlfriend and he told her he was about to do something really terrible and that whenever she saw his name on the news, she should turn off the TV. He told her explicitly that he was going to kill all the kids at school. She knew that he was supposed to be in DAEP, and she was so worried about the text that she contacted the police. DAEP went on lockdown until officers got a call from a guy at church that had 2 guns that had been stolen from his car behind the school, and that's when they put 2 and 2 together and caught him hiding in the woods. I guess when he saw me and my 2 friends in the nature trail, he quickly hid the shotgun, but just didn't have enough time to hide the pistol. That or he just didn't care enough to hide. Whatever the case, I'm just really glad me and my friends got out alive that day. Who the really knows what could have happened if we actually gave him a ride or stayed behind with them. I'm 15 years old and currently in the 10th grade. Last year I was acting for one of my school's productions as I go to this really artsy school in my city, so the turnout was pretty good. I had played a really small part who basically explains the plot. Anyhow, after I was done with the scene, me and a couple of the other actors had decided to go backstage. Behind our stage was this hallway. Most of the actors would just chill and wait for their scenes there. At the end of the said hallway was a door that would lead outside. I was chatting with a friend of mine when there was a knock at the door. We all froze. One of the seniors named Jay had asked what it was. We all started to stare out of the window of the door into the pitch black. I began to walk towards the door with Jay right behind me, then telling me to let him go out. I didn't really know what to do at that point. I guess I just really wanted to impress the other actors. I opened the door and looked upon the field. A really cool breeze then hit me in the face. There was another actor there named Kai that stood behind me as I looked around the door. I couldn't see anyone though, so I shut the door. All of the other actors were scolding me for opening the door. Anyhow, right after the end of the night after the show had finished, I was waiting in the almost empty staff and student parking lot right outside for my mom to pick me up. I was listening to some music and looking around when I then saw something move right in the field. I turned my head to try and get a closer look of it, and I could have sworn that I saw 2 people hiding right under a tree. One was holding what had looked like a baseball bat, while the other just stood next to him. Once they had spotted me, I then yelled, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" They both then turned and then began to run towards me. I began to bang on the doors and was constantly looking right over my shoulder at the 2 of them. Luckily for me, one of the other actors had quickly opened the door, and I then ran inside and told her to shut it. She did, and then she began to ask me what was wrong, and I swear I could feel my stomach drop. Right at that moment, there was a loud bang on the door. We could now see that it was 2 fully grown men who appeared to be in their 30s. One was hitting the door with a metal baseball bat, and the other was holding what looked to be a steak knife. Luckily, the actress, who I'll refer to as Taylor, began to dial 911 and then yelled that she was calling the cops. They had immediately bolted. When the cops arrived, they had searched under the tree. As it turns out, they had apparently been there since the start of the play, based on the cigarettes and a pamphlet about the play that was found under it. What was shocking was that my name, along with 2 of my fellow actors, the main characters, were circled. It seemed like when they knocked on the door, they were hoping it was just one of those actors. I guess they thought we'd be an easy target or something. I don't know. I'm really grateful for Jay being behind me when I had opened the door. And please, whatever you do, always have someone nearby. You just don't know what's out there lurking in the darkness, just waiting for you. Be careful. I typically don't really like attention, yet since freshman year, I've got nothing but admirers. It wasn't quite the dream though. I tend to attract guys that I find, for lack of a better word, gross and dumb. They have no idea about boundaries or hygiene. The people who I did like seem to never feel the same. This one boy really stands out like a sore thumb because I had once told this story in a YouTube video. However, I was urged to delete it because of some of the information I said. This started when I was around 14 to early 15 years old. For some quick context, I'm autistic and I use a classroom called BMC. The classroom was made for kids who needed help with emotional issues, such as anger or depression. Now, I only ever went to this classroom when I needed a break from all of the kids in the hectic classrooms, or whenever I was agitated. I never really talked to anyone in the classroom other than the staff. There were always at least 2 or 3 teachers in there to make sure none of these kids went too crazy. Some were really chill, but a lot of them were really crazy and hyper. I, most of the time, just listened to music while working. Because of this, I was shut off from the craziness and kind of just in my own little world. One day though, one of these kids who we'll call Jack came out to my spot on the bus stop. I ride the special need bus because the regular ones are typically just a little too crazy or crowded for me. But the bus that I usually rode parked at the furthest end of the bus loop. So I normally just wait by the trees nearby while listening to music and singing. That's when who we'll call Jack then came up to me. I was kinda surprised. He said that he had a crush on me despite us never even talking prior to this point. That was one warning sign I ignored. The second was that he asked if I wanted to go to prom with him. He was a senior. What made it even worse was that when my bus finally showed, I gave him my number and told him bye. What he said back to me, well, made me want to vomit. He then said with no hesitations whatsoever, "I love you." I'm not kidding. The literal minute that I sit down on the bus, he then starts spamming me with texts. At one point I even muted his texts and they'd still blow up my phone. Eventually I told my parents and the BMC manager what he was doing to me. They told me that he was 18 and that what he was doing could be considered illegal. I immediately blocked him on every single platform I owned. I really thought that would be the end of it, but sadly not. He would occasionally try and talk to me yet again. At first, I tried to be nice about rejecting him, but by the 3rd or 4th time, I just grew sick of it. I told him that if he kept it up, I was going to tell my parents and they would go to the police. He finally left me alone for a long time after that. This entire experience really taught me to trust my gut because he was literally trying to date a 14-year-old girl. I really hope that this tells you that no matter what, it's always okay to listen to your gut. Otherwise, you could end up in a very scary or really uncomfortable scenario. When I was about 5 years old, my school was doing the stranger danger talk with all of the students. Things like don't talk to strangers, if a car follows you, walk further back on the sidewalk and then walk the opposite way where the car is facing, and how to get someone's turn signal to go off if you're in their trunk. Things like that. After school, I usually went to after-school care. That is, unless my mom was going to be working late. In that case, then my grandparents would pick me up. This happened pretty often since my mom was a single badass mom of 3 who worked full-time as a charge nurse and was also battling cancer. I never really minded going to my grandparents' house so much, especially since they really spoiled me rotten. I had one of those Razor scooters that I would always ride up and down their driveway, as well as my uncle's because he lived next door. One day while I was playing in the backyard, I had then heard the sound of my grandpa's truck leaving the driveway. I got really excited because I knew that I could now ride my scooter in the driveway. Normally I would go inside and tell my grandma because she would keep the front door open to keep an eye out on me. But I didn't want to waste any time since I didn't know when my grandpa would be back. I had quickly ran out of the gate right to the front yard, grabbed my scooter, and then started riding back and forth between my grandparents' and uncle's driveway. A few minutes later, I had noticed a man at the end of the block. He had slowly started walking towards the house. The only reason he caught my attention as odd is because it was September in Texas, and it was really hot. I was wearing capris and a short-sleeve shirt, while the man had long pants and also a jacket on with the hood up. His hands were in his pockets and his head was down. Thinking back to what we had been talking about at school, I'd started to get really nervous, but made another round to both driveways. The man had started walking faster now. I tried to justify it by thinking that maybe he'd been friends with my uncle or something. I mean, that really could have been a possibility. This time, I had only went up and down my grandparents' driveway, not my uncle's. The man was at the end of my uncle's driveway and started cutting across the grass heading directly for me. I threw my scooter to the ground and ran for the backyard. Once I was in the backyard, I grabbed my dog and ran in the house, because I guess in my 5-year-old mind, I was worried that my dog would get stolen by this man. Once I got inside, I had ran to my grandma who was sitting on the couch. I asked her to go check if there was a man outside. She looked out the window and she said yes, that he's walking the other way. I didn't tell her what happened in fear that I would get in trouble for not telling her I was out in the front yard in the first place. I'm so glad that our school talked to us about strangers, because I honestly don't know if I would have reacted the same way without their talk. It took me a couple of months to be comfortable playing outside again, even in the backyard. When I did make an attempt to play out in the front, I decided to stay hidden in between my grandparents' and uncle's homes. One day while I was building a fort, I had noticed a car that was passing by my grandparents' house. It then slammed its brakes right in front of their house. I looked over and I noticed about 2 men right in the front of the car pointing at me. I took off for the backyard and then heard the car then pull out. I don't really know if they had bad intentions or not, or maybe just wondering what I was doing. But that happening, along with the creepy man, was enough to terrify me into not playing outside for the next 2 years. For a 5-year-old kid, I was terrified.
My biggest mistake in high school was agreeing to take a AP physics class with the seniors. I was a rising sophomore at the time, so when I walked into a class with kids much older than I was, my teacher sat me next to the only other person there that was close to my age. He was a freshman and his name was Josh. Josh was one of those people who gave off weird vibes. He had a sloppily shaven head, empty eyes, and ate warm Skittles in class. He was short, but mean-looking, and the instant I sat down next to him, my teacher ordered us to exchange numbers and tried to make us start talking. For some reason, I really did not want to talk to him. I wasn't trying to be an a-hole, but he just scared me. Sitting next to him felt like what I can only describe as sitting next to a hungry dog, while you're holding a piece of chicken. It felt like any second he would jump on me, even though he was a good 6 inches shorter than me. It really freaked me out that he had my phone number and name, even though I didn't know the kid. I had a feeling that him knowing literally anything about me was not good. Luckily, he didn't talk to me for over a week, and after some time, I thought I was just being over-judgmental, and he was just a socially awkward kid. One day, about 3 weeks later, after I started the class with him, he talked to me. He asked something like, "You're the girl that drives the F-150, right?" And reluctantly, I said, "Yeah." He then told me that cars were a hobby of his, and he had seen me driving and liked my truck. Although I was caught a bit off guard, he seemed innocent and nice, and we kind of became friends after that. He started texting me a lot after school, asking me a bit about myself and sharing a bit about himself too. Like I said, the kid seemed innocent, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that I shouldn't be telling him anything about myself, and I should not be talking to him. The average conversation continued for a month or so, until one day, when I came home from work. I work at a restaurant about 20 minutes away from my house. So, when I turned my phone on to drive to work, I honestly wouldn't turn it back on. I honestly wouldn't turn it back on until I drove back home, as phones were prohibited at the restaurant. One week I came home at 12 after doing closing shift, and he had sent me several odd texts. They all consisted of "I love you," and I want to take you to homecoming and be my girlfriend. They all rubbed me the wrong way. He didn't seem to really be asking as much as he was demanding me to have a relationship with him. That I wasn't comfortable with. I ultimately friend-zoned him and told him I was going to bed. His response was, no, just no. It freaked me the F out and made me really not want to go to class on Monday. But I had no choice and I had to go. He didn't text me for the rest of the weekend, and when I sulked into class on Monday, he gave me the same hungry dog stare from day one, and I ignored him the whole class. I practically ran when the bell rang, and when I got to my car in the student parking lot, I saw him watch me drive away from the sidewalk. It freaked me out more than I'd like to admit, so I called one of my guy friends and asked him if I could drive him home from school so I'd feel safer until creepy Josh would be less creepy. He agreed and we made an arrangement there and then. A lot of people thought I was overreacting, but I just knew in my gut that I needed someone in the car with me, and this guy friend seemed like the right one. When I came home from work at 10ish Monday night, I opened my phone and saw more texts from Josh. This time they were much more predatory than the night before, as at night they were detailing how he would like me to perform acts on him. I foolishly allowed this to happen for another couple of weeks. Still feeling uncomfortable in class when it finally hit a breaking point, Josh started sending me texts about how if I didn't love him, he had to die. At that point, I decided it was time to involve a dean, but she did virtually nothing. She basically explained that Josh was special needs, and to cut him some slack. Despite the predatory tone of the messages, she told me she would talk to him about it, but not to worry, because he likely wouldn't do anything. I was infuriated and told my dad, who has his army of Italian brothers, who all decided to keep an eye on him. The creepy messages didn't get any worse, and eventually they stopped after I blocked his number. That was when the really creepy stuff started. The cameras outside our houses kept picking up a person at night, someone very similar looking to Josh. This person kept knocking on the windows and looking into my car, so my dad called the cops, who were actually awesome and kept a lookout on my house for a while to deter the nightly visits. With the cop outside at night, the visit stopped, and my work started getting calls from Josh asking when I was working. My manager ended up alerting security, who threatened him to stop calling. Then Josh decided to start frequenting the restaurant where I worked at every day, and leave paper cranes on the table saying, "I love you," with my name, and my new boyfriend's name isn't good for you, I am. He started following me to class, to my car, to work, even though I pretended he wasn't there, and I was still driving my 6'3" guy home friend with me. I refused to leave my house without a group of people, and debated skipping prom, and becoming a hermit because he made me feel so unsafe anywhere. Eventually, my dad decided a restraining order would be a good idea, and I did get one granted, so he couldn't walk near me or contact me for 5 years. Thankfully, this finally caused the year-long nightmare to stop. I didn't see Josh again until my senior year, when I was walking down the hall with my friends. He saw me coming, stopped in his tracks, and slowly watched me walk past him with that same hungry dog look. That initially scared me the day I met him. You're probably wondering why he never got in any trouble when I contacted the dean and the police. Well, where I live, there's a bunch of laws that make it exponentially harder for someone with special needs to be punished for creepy behavior, even though they're just as capable to execute the behavior than the average person. The last time I saw Josh was on graduation, when I could have sworn he was the one in the front row waiting for me to get my diploma. Although it's possible he was there for someone else, a part of me knows he was there for me. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that this can happen to anyone. I never thought this would happen to me until it did, and it robbed me of my safety, high school experience, and peace of mind. Always trust your instincts in someone. You are not required to be nice to anyone who makes you uncomfortable. That led me to now. I'm happy. I'm in a serious relationship with an awesome guy. And in a weird way, I'm glad. I was able to learn from this whole experience.